This former assistant may seem like just another employee caught in a celebrity scandal, but what she revealed under oath could shift the entire case. On day 17 of the federal trial against Sean Diddy Combs, the woman known only by the EU pseudonym Mia returned to the stand, this time under intense cross-examination. Her testimony, once private and buried under years of silence, is now at the center of a legal firestorm, raising new questions about power, trauma, and credibility in one of the most high-profile cases of the year. If the defense succeeds in casting doubt on Mia's credibility, it could significantly weaken the prosecution's case and shift momentum in favor of Sean Combs. The jury's perception of her testimony, especially under the pressure of cross-examination, may determine whether her allegations are seen as a consistent account of abuse or a narrative that unravels under scrutiny. With the possibility of a life sentence on the line, every word spoken in court carries enormous weight, not just for Mia, but for the future of the entire trial. Mia, the former assistant to Sean Diddy Combs, returned to the witness stand for the second consecutive day, continuing to testify under the protection of a pseudonym. During her direct examination, she offered a detailed account of her time working for Combs, describing it as emotionally abusive, unpredictable, and governed entirely by his whims. Working for him was chaotic and toxic, she said, adding that she often felt she had no choice but to comply with his demands, no matter how personal or uncomfortable. She testified that she feared saying no to him, explaining to the jury, "I felt I had to. I obeyed Puff's orders." Her statements painted a picture of a young woman trapped in a job that blurred the lines between professional obligation and personal violation. But it was during the cross-examination that tensions in the courtroom escalated. The defense team, led by attorney Brian Steele, presented the jury with several of Mia's past social media posts, including Instagram captions and handwritten notes, in which she praised Combs as a mentor, a legend, and a rock star unicorn. Steele pressed her repeatedly, asking how someone who claims to have been sexually assaulted and emotionally manipulated could speak about their alleged abuser in such admiring terms. "That's the man who traumatized you?" he asked. "That's the man you say assaulted you multiple times?" Mia's response was measured but emotionally charged. "Yes," she said, "I was in an abusive relationship." She explained that the image she projected online was not a reflection of her lived reality, but a curated version designed to protect herself, her career, and her privacy. "I didn't want my family and friends to know what I was going through," she said. "Those posts were part of the job. They were part of the mask." She also addressed the significance of November 4th, Combs' birthday, which she had previously identified as the date of the first alleged assault. When asked why she posted celebratory tributes to him on that day, including a handwritten "Happy 45th Birthday Puff Daddy" message and a photo collage, Mia said she remembered the date as his birthday, not as the day of the assault. "I wasn't connecting it that way," she told the court. The contradictions between Mia's online admiration for Combs and the abuse she described in court became a central theme of the defense's strategy. But prosecutors attempted to contextualize this by highlighting the power dynamics at play and the psychological toll of long-term trauma. Mia's testimony continued to walk the line between two conflicting narratives, one shaped by public image and the other by deeply personal pain. The courtroom battle over Mia's credibility has become a central front in the legal showdown between Sean Combs' defense team and federal prosecutors. On day 17, defense attorney Brian Steele escalated his line of attack, zeroing in on Mia's public persona as portrayed on social media. Steele methodically presented a series of posts, messages, and even a handwritten birthday card in which Mia described Combs in glowing, affectionate terms, calling him a rock star unicorn, mentor, and legend. He repeatedly pressed her on the contradiction. How could someone who claims to have been repeatedly assaulted and emotionally terrorized post such flattering tributes to her alleged abuser? His strategy was clear: undermine her emotional testimony by framing her as inconsistent, performative, and ultimately unreliable. Legal analysts, however, caution that this line of questioning is a double-edged sword. While it may resonate with jurors unfamiliar with trauma psychology, it also runs the risk of appearing tone-deaf or even hostile, particularly when directed at a witness who has openly described suffering from complex PTSD. Prosecutors anticipated this tactic. During direct examination, they worked to frame Mia's behavior as not contradictory, but deeply typical of abuse victims. They cited patterns common in coercive environments: the normalization of harm, the pressure to maintain appearances, and the instinct to self-protect through compliance. Mia herself testified that praising Combs publicly wasn't about admiration. It was a survival mechanism. "I didn't want my family or friends to know what I was going through," she said. "My job required me to support him. That was the image I had to project." This explanation was backed by prior expert testimony from Dr. Dawn Hughes, a forensic psychologist who specializes in trauma. Dr. Hughes explained that victims of prolonged emotional or sexual abuse often remain in contact with their abusers and may even express affection toward them, either as a coping strategy or due to the psychological entanglement known as trauma bonding. Prosecutors leaned heavily on this framework to help jurors understand why Mia's actions, however puzzling on the surface, were consistent with the psychology of abuse victims. Still, the defense's approach is calculated. Steele's strategy appears to be aimed at creating reasonable doubt, especially among older jurors who may be less familiar with how trauma is processed or how curated and disconnected social media can be from reality. With 5 jurors reportedly in their late 60s or early 70s, there's a real question of how they'll interpret the digital evidence. Will they see the Instagram captions as harmless PR or as proof that Mia's story doesn't add up? The outcome of this case could hinge not just on facts, but on which narrative about trauma, clinical or cynical, ultimately takes hold in the jury's mind. As Mia's testimony dominated the courtroom on day 17, the public conversation around the trial exploded online. With cameras banned from the federal courtroom, many have turned to search engines and social media to fill in the gaps, leading to a spike in curiosity about the key players and legal implications of the case. One of the most searched questions of the day: who is Mia, really? With her identity shielded by a pseudonym, speculation has grown. Some believe she may have once appeared alongside Combs in the entertainment world, possibly on reality TV or within his public circle. Legal experts explain that pseudonyms in federal court are rare, but used in high-stakes cases involving sexual violence or trafficking to protect victims from retaliation and public exposure. Another trending question centers on D-Rock, a longtime associate of Combs whose name surfaced in Mia's messages and courtroom testimony. D-Rock, born Roger Bonds, was previously the head of security for Notorious B.I.G. and later for Combs himself. Court documents and testimony suggest he may have played a role in managing or concealing incidents of alleged abuse, though he has not been formally charged in this case. His presence in the narrative has sparked new interest in the broader network surrounding Combs and whether others could be implicated as the trial continues. There's also growing speculation about the potential for a presidential pardon. With the case being tried in federal court, a conviction could open the door for a pardon from the president. This possibility gained traction after a White House spokesperson was asked directly about it earlier this week and did not rule it out. Online discussions have revisited old photos of Donald Trump and Sean Combs together, pointing to their once public friendship. While a pardon remains purely hypothetical at this stage, it has become a lightning rod for debate, especially among those questioning whether celebrity or political connections could override the judicial process. Finally, many are asking what kind of prison time Combs could face if convicted. The charges against him, ranging from sexual assault to human trafficking-related offenses, carry the potential for a life sentence. Legal analysts note that the scope of allegations, including testimony from multiple women and evidence pointing to a pattern of coercion and control, could lead to the harshest sentencing if the jury finds him guilty on all counts. The stakes of this trial aren't just legal, they're cultural, raising deep questions about power, protection, and public accountability in the era of Dark Me Too. With week 3 of testimony now concluded, the trial against Sean Diddy Combs enters a critical phase. Mia's time on the stand, marked by emotional testimony and an intense cross-examination, has added new complexity to a case already defined by high-profile allegations and deeply personal accounts. Her statements, alongside mounting public interest and legal debate, have set the stage for what could be a pivotal turning point as the prosecution continues to build its argument and the defense works to dismantle it piece by piece. As jurors head home for the weekend, many of the questions raised this week remain unanswered. Will Mia's testimony stand strong in the eyes of the jury? Will the defense's focus on social media and inconsistencies create lasting doubt? And how will future witnesses, and potentially Combs himself, shape the remaining days of this high-stakes trial? We'll continue to follow every development as it unfolds. Be sure to tune in daily for our continuing coverage of Burden of Proof, the case against Diddy. You can also follow our in-depth analysis on the Bad Rap podcast, available on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and wherever you get your news. For now, I'm Anchor Name, and we'll see you next time with more insight, more testimony, and more on what's at stake in this landmark case.